Hello, thank you for watching. These were all the Storm Prediction Center severe weather reports from Monday, this past Monday, May 13th. If you look down by the Gulf Coast here, see a number of these thunderstorm wind reports. Those are in blue. In the green there, those are hail reports. In the red, those few dots you can see, those are brief tornado reports, again, just from this past Monday. If you look up toward Iowa, though, kind of what I'm willing to call a surprise thunderstorm wind event here. I'll be honest, waking up this morning, there was a chance for showers and storms in this area. Wasn't thinking too much of it other than maybe, this time of year you can get some of those small hail events that can kind of pile up in the fields, but wasn't seeing on the horizon that this afternoon we get something of a more significant wind event that raced through parts of the southern Snake River Valley here. Some of these wind reports and the damage with them getting up near 80 miles an hour. When you kind of cross that threshold from 60 to 80, that's when you start damaging power lines, you get more large limbs down, you get power outages, etc. So not an insignificant event here that, I'll be the first to admit, surprised me a little bit, but just a reminder that, the weather is hard to predict, and some of these severe thunderstorm events can materialize quickly in the late afternoon, depending on what you're looking at that morning. If you look closely at some of the radar here, the radar in some of these areas in the interior west isn't the best just because the radar beam that comes out from some of the National Weather Service, it can be blocked by the terrain in the mountains. But nonetheless, if you look closely, I'll circle it here as they fire. There's those thunderstorms that blew up in the afternoon, and those quickly raced across the Snake River Valley here in kind of far southern Idaho, causing the damage. Again, I'll let it play one more time. You can see them blow up here on the Columbia Plateau and then race quickly east. And most likely a bow echo in here that is a little bit hard to see, again, because of the radar coverage in some of these areas out west. Other things we saw this past weekend was the Geostorm that we witnessed on Friday and then into Saturday as well. Saw auroras, I'll be honest, outside of my house here in the Midwest. I have never seen them before, certainly this far south. And as that moved across the west of the United States, as nightfall fell in the area, those reports followed them. So as it went out and toward Colorado, you saw aurora reports there, and I was waiting to get some from further west. This one right here is from the National Weather Service out of Reno, Nevada, showing the aurora borealis there. Again, Reno, which is not terribly far north, certainly not something up near the Arctic Circle where you typically expect to see the lights like this, but kind of a historic geostorm, I think. Not the strongest one we've dealt with ever, but enough to get the northern lights in some of the more southern locations here. Heard they were visible as well from the Sierras, the Palisades area. Harder to see them, I think, west of there in some of the low-lying areas in California, and then on the coast due to some light pollution. But nonetheless, great pictures here from the National Weather Service, again, out of the Reno office. We are in actually a solar cycle sunspot maximum. It's kind of this 11-year, almost decadal cycle that the sun predictably follows, where coming up toward 2025, we're in 2024 right now here. I'll try to move that dialog box off the screen. We are actually near one of these peaks here in 2024. So we have more sunspots, more chances for these solar flares, which cause these geomagnetic storms that can impact Earth. A number of things have to go right in order for them to impact the Earth and cause the aurora borealis. I am not a space meteorologist, but nonetheless, I can tell you that we're near one of these sunspot maximums. So it's possible that just over the next few years, this might not be the last event we're talking about where the northern lights make it a little bit further south in the United States. If you remember or were old enough, 2003 saw another one of these events kind of on the backside of one of these solar maximums here. So we're entering one now. This might not be the last chance to see some odd northern lights in some southern locations, depending on where exactly you are. All right, let's catch us up to Wednesday afternoon. I usually start these satellite imagery earlier in the video further north because that's where the activity has tended to be just over the last 30 days or so. But this time, focus more on the southwest. If you look closely, some of these clouds here, these are showers and thunderstorms kind of percolating along the Colorado Plateau here in northern Arizona, the northern two-thirds of Mexico. Some of these high clouds now kind of pushing over Southern California, likely trying to get some rain into this area, but I think much of it still evaporating in what we call virga here. A few echoes just off the southern Sierra Nevadas as well. These don't look like they're trying to move off too quickly off the Sierra Nevadas, but nonetheless, this is all, I think, an influence from something we talked about last week, and that's a trough, kind of a weak trough that's situated over the area. If you look closely, you see these high clouds here coming out of the top of the image. It's the upper level winds moving kind of north to south like this. That's the backside or the west side of the trough. And if you look toward the east of this image, so with the high kind of wispy cloud tops above these thunderstorms, those are moving northeast. So you can almost make out the trough there as these upper level winds are coming down in this U shape. That's allowing some of these thunderstorms to get extra instability. Trough is really just cold air aloft in the atmosphere. Thunderstorms are a byproduct of when you have warm air at the surface, colder air aloft, warm moist air beneath that. That's instability. The thunderstorms are a release of that instability. So colder air aloft in that pocket of the trough. We get some thunderstorms over the southwest. You can see some of those high clouds trying to get over Southern California as well. We'll get the radar jump over kind of that same area. A number of these just showers here, but some of these some stronger thunderstorms off the east of the divide. Just some weak showers and storms here in northern Arizona. And then again, those are that little high clouds trying to get over California. Can't rule out some light precipitation associated with this streak here, but nothing too significant. Taking a big picture look, this is the water vapor satellite imagery loop across North America. There's a lot going on here. If you take a quick glance at it, I'll focus your attention to, I think, two important features that will be relevant to the forecast. One, we talked about those high clouds, right, streaming out of the north of the image, which on the slide before was northern Nevada. So we'll go there. If we look at the high clouds here, you can see those moving south, kind of pivoting into a trough, and then the high clouds here are moving that way. So there's kind of your trough showing up on the water vapor satellite imagery here. Got a little bit of a shortwave trough. That's what we call those, kind of embedded in these larger wave features here. That's probably helping to kick off some of the thunderstorm activity that we just looked at. Now, what goes up in the atmosphere often comes down, and I'm going to reverse that. What goes down in the atmosphere came up before, and what I mean by that is if we have a trough here, it very well may mean that we have a ridge to the west, and that is what we see. So here's your trough, but if we look to the west, see a very large upper level ridge pushing now into parts of the northwest and the Pacific Northwest coastline as well. And if you look closely, it's spinning like a big clockwise drum. What I mean by that, you can see the cloud field going all the way around it in that water vapor loop. There's your big upper level ridge situated just off the west coast of Oregon. Now this is bringing in higher temperatures to the west coast, bringing a break from a lot of the precipitation that we saw in parts of Oregon, Washington, and Northern California. It has, right, as it's diving down into this trough, producing more precipitation here over the four corners, but it has given a break and some warmer weather to some areas in here across the west. If we jump over and look at high temperatures here today, again across the west region, we can see that influence of that upper level ridging spreading across the northwest. Oregon, Washington, well above average for the high temperatures today. Northern California. The color bar you see here, those are departures from average. So we're warmer than we even typically are here in May. If I jump over and look at the daily maximum high temperature forecast for this Wednesday afternoon, talking high 70s in parts of the Willamette Valley, high 80s in eastern Washington, 70s in the Snake River Valley, even up to close to the 80s there in the Treasure Valley. I'm talking 90s in the Central Valley at least, and then mid to upper 90s in parts of the lower Colorado River Valley in the southeast. One area that, despite that ridging moving in, that's maybe remained a little bit cooler, unfortunately along the coast, still dealing with a lot of that kind of appropriately named May gray. There's a lot of the marine layer fog still pushing in the morning. Today it's not quite as strong as I think it has been in recent days, clearing out more predictably here as we go through midday. But nonetheless, that has been pesky and persistent here as we've gone through May. I think a piece of that, or something influencing that, is we've seen this year a stronger North Pacific high. Now that's a kind of a semi-permanent, certainly permanent for California's weather. Typically in summer, we get a high pressure system here off the coast. When this is a little bit stronger than usual, especially here in May and June, that tends to increase the temperature inversion just above that marine layer, which can make it even more persistent. What you're looking at here is just over the last 30 days of mean sea level pressure anomalies. And basically what this map is telling us is that this high pressure system has been even stronger than it typically is to start out May. We have more subsidence, again, just above that marine layer, and it just locks it into place here along the coast of California. One way to kind of kick it out of the area is to get some of those upper level ridges and move that high pressure system more so over California. We'll see some of that. I think we're seeing a little bit of that here today with a weaker marine layer, but it's not, doesn't look like it's going to be too successful, unfortunately. Take a look at the jet stream above. We kind of drew this out already, right? There's that clockwise spinning upper level ridge here off the west coast of Oregon, bringing that warmer temperature influence into the northwest, into California, even some other areas like Idaho and Montana. But there is that trough here centered more over the southwest. Again, we kind of surmised that earlier just by kind of following those high-level clouds. I pulled this up because there's something else I'm going to talk about in just a few slides on this video here. If you look over in the middle of the Pacific here, the north central Pacific, you see this fast spinning kind of compact upper level trough. That is a cutoff Kona Low, and they're called Kona Lows because they can impact the state of Hawaii, which is just down here, probably hard to see on this image. This is going to be important for the Hawaii's forecast going through the weekend. I think, unfortunately, pretty important in terms of impact for flooding. So we'll take a look at that in a minute, but did want to show you that, kind of piece together the whole upper level atmosphere in the jet stream conversation. Kind of to segue off of that, we will now follow out in the forecast that jet stream level flow from the ECMWF model here. I'll make this valid as of Wednesday afternoon. There's that upper level ridge parked just off the west coast of Oregon here. I said just off, that maybe is 900 miles or so, but relatively speaking of this map, just off the coast of Oregon here. There's that weak troughing here, again, situated across the southwest, spurring those thunderstorms over the Four Corners. I'm going to play this forecast forward now into Thursday morning and then into Friday morning. And unfortunately, if you were rooting for more warmth and kind of a break from the cooler temperatures out west, we are seeing that ridge kind of evaporate pretty quickly, unfortunately, just as we go through the weekend, or get closer to the weekend, I should say. That ridge flattening out, losing a little bit of influence here. You can see those jet stream level winds now coming on shore in Oregon and through Idaho as well. This is on Friday midday. Take that forecast forward, you can see that dipping down even further into some weak troughing now across Oregon, parts of Washington, Idaho, western Montana as well. California's still beneath that troughing there, kind of in between this dip here and the subtropical jet stream. So probably not a big cool down for this area here. Nonetheless, that troughing getting more established across the west as we go through the weekend. Now really kind of bottoming out into a trough that will likely affect parts of Oregon and Washington as we go toward the end of the weekend into early next week. And then something that's kind of catching my eye, if you look closely toward the British Columbia, Pacific Northwest area here, as we go through Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, that would be the 21st and the 22nd. See something more of a compact trough here, likely to bring precipitation back into this area more wholesale, kind of middle of the week next week, early to middle of the week, with this compact trough moving in next week. We jump over and look at the precipitation conversation over that same time period. This is playing it out through Wednesday evening here. Not too much to talk about. And through Thursday, those thunderstorms that we talked about associated with that troughing now moving east of the Continental Divide here Thursday evening. You can see just some showers and precip now getting into parts of the Pacific Northwest, Northwest Washington, and parts of the far northern Cascades here on Thursday evening. As that jet stream level flow gets more influence across the northwest, can see some light precip getting into far northern Idaho, northwest Montana, likely not too much getting into the Golden Triangle, at least as we go through Friday. Saturday, again, another brief shot of precipitation through, again, parts of the far northwest, Pacific Northwest, including northern areas of Idaho, far northwest Montana, far northeast Washington. Potentially some light showers here coming through on Sunday for the Pacific Northwest, maybe even the Willamette Valley. And see some more precip coming through Monday evening for parts of the Golden Triangle. Again, nothing too strong here, but you can kind of see these daily light precipitation events through the weekend and into early next week until that compact trough arrives, at least on this ECMWF forecast now for next Wednesday. And that's when we can see some of the more significant, just a little bit more material, measurable rainfall now getting into the Willamette Valley, maybe even parts of eastern Washington and northeast Oregon, potentially lasting into Wednesday evening, maybe even Thursday as well. Some of the models trying to keep this low pressure system kind of lingering in this area here, which could increase rainfall and snowfall totals in some of the higher elevations. The GFS model is pretty similar. I want to get kind of a different opinion on where that's going next week because it is getting out into that 6 to 7 day forecast. So take this forecast through Thursday evening and Friday, or very early Friday morning. You can see that brief rainfall coming through for parts of the western Washington area. Play the forecast out into the future, into Friday, and now into Saturday. Again, just these kind of brief rainfall events coming through the far northwest. Go through Sunday as well, into Monday, early Tuesday, and then the GFS bringing this low pressure system in and that trough a little bit quicker than ECMWF, making it more of a Tuesday and Wednesday event versus a Wednesday and Thursday event. That pushes through eastern Washington on Tuesday afternoon into parts of northern Idaho, even trying to get in maybe closer to the Boise area. Not expecting too significant a precipitation as that comes through on Wednesday. And then lingering that low pressure system, again, just kind of in this general area here, potentially bringing some excess snowfall to the mountains here and some light precip in some of the valleys here Wednesday evening before it kind of spins and loses strength with just some snow showers there through the end of next week. Now, that was a low pressure system coming through Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of next week. That's already kind of a 6, 7, 8 day forecast. So not a ton of predictability in terms of which areas are going to get the most precip. Didn't look like too significant of a precipitation event, but nonetheless, it's the end of May. So it is getting a little bit more anomalous to get some of these rainfall and snowfall events in here as we go toward the end of May. This is from the ECMWF model here, the precipitation departures from average for the next 7 days, Friday of this week through Friday of the next work week. See, generally more precipitation than average expected for parts of the Pacific Northwest and getting into far northern Idaho, far northwest Montana. The GFS, pretty similar look. The GFS a little bit weaker in terms of that Willamette Valley precipitation with a little bit more of a focus on northern Idaho and far western Montana. I want to jump over and look at how we're doing with temperatures. I'll make this, again, color-coded by anomaly here, and see the influence of that upper level ridge on the west here. So take that through Thursday, seen that continue for parts of eastern Oregon, Idaho, northern Central Valley of California, far southeastern California, Utah. Again, unfortunately, that May gray probably stealing some of those higher temperatures from the coastal areas here, and you can see the influence of that jet stream now coming back toward Washington and Oregon starts to make its presence known on Friday as temperatures start to fall in areas like eastern Washington, far northwest and northern Montana, parts of Idaho, the northern half of Oregon through the day on Friday. I mentioned earlier that jet stream kind of situated like that, so if we can stay south of that, these areas here are likely to stay warmer, excluding folks, again, on the central and southern California coastline because of that persistent May gray that stuck around and blocked the sunlight and some of that afternoon warmth from getting in. If you go out into Saturday and Sunday, again, you can still see the influence of that jet stream coming in, keeping the northwest and northern areas cooler. South of that, a little bit warmer, and then cooler along the coastline. That story plays out into Sunday before early next week. That's when that troughing started to dip even further south, bringing some colder temperatures now to the west as a whole. Nothing too significant here, not your biggest cold temperature anomalies, but not looking at the anomalous warmth that we've got a little bit used to here, I think, here in the early part of this week. And then we'll certainly get more used to it as we go through the end of this week and into the weekend. I want to jump back over and revisit that Kona Low. We saw that kind of at the beginning of the video here. The product I'm showing you, this is valid as of Wednesday afternoon. This is 500 millibar vorticity. This forecast is from the ECMWF. 500 millibar vorticity is a kind of fancy word for spin in the mid-levels of the atmosphere. And I'm showing you this product because I think it's a great way to highlight where that Kona Low is spinning just north of Hawaii here. Here's Hawaii in the center of the screen, and I'll play this forward into Thursday and then into Friday. You'll notice it's just kind of wobbling, if you will, there northwest of Hawaii. Now, it's quite a ways northwest, but it's going to play an important role in terms of impacting Hawaii's weather because of this region. Now, these Kona Lows, they have counterclockwise spin around them. It's a low-pressure system. So we're in the northern hemisphere. Low-pressure systems cause this counterclockwise flow, kind of similar to a hurricane, if you will. And that is going to pull up some very moist Pacific air further to the south here, and it's going to bring it up into Hawaii, more so toward western Hawaii, just in more proximity to this Kona Low here. Rather than explain that, I'd rather just show it to you from the ECMWF. This is a different product looking at precipitable water anomalies over the central Pacific. Again, that Kona Low kind of situated here, where on the front or east side of that, it's pulling up this Pacific moisture, which hangs down here in the tropical area. As I take this forecast into Thursday, early Thursday morning, and see a lot of anomalous Pacific moisture being pulled up over Oahu initially, maybe even parts of Maui at times a little bit further east. And then I think as we go through this forecast, you'll see that focus shift a little bit more toward Kauai. This now through Thursday afternoon, still focused, unfortunately, on Oahu here with a lot of that Pacific moisture. As we go through the day Friday and look closely, you can see that stream of anomalous moisture, maybe that axis of that strongest transport shifting west of Oahu, going through Friday evening. And then unfortunately by Saturday, focusing more so on Kauai, but still seeing some pretty high values over Oahu and maybe even Maui into the islands to the west of that as well. So pretty concerned about the rainfall situation here. You can just see how anomalous some of the specific moisture that's getting pulled up is. There's that Kona Low. You can actually make out that spin in the mid levels and the lower levels of the atmosphere from that spinning low pressure system here. That's through the day Saturday, now getting into early Sunday, through Sunday here finally, and then Monday evening finally looking for a break and getting that moisture west of the islands, potentially still looking at some influence on Kauai here as we go through the day Monday. So that's, Wednesday, Thursday, really Thursday, Friday, focus more on Oahu, shifting sometime kind of Saturday, Sunday over Kauai, but a slight shift or a wobble in that Kona Low could move that axis of higher moisture flux, to the left or the right, or keep it, unfortunately, over the same area. I think the long story short here is there's some significant flooding risk to the islands of Hawaii as we go through the weekend here with a multi-day persistent heavy rain event. And I would say that's more elevated here, certainly for Kauai and Oahu, but it can't rule out something like Maui getting in on some of the high precipitation as well, if there were to be one of those wobbles to the right here. So hoping folks stay safe here in Hawaii. It's interesting to think that typically coming out of an El Nino year at the end of the water year, we expect drought more of an issue from Hawaii, and we just haven't quite seen that this year. There are areas that are technically in the lowest classifications of drought or on the drier side, but some of these Kona lows, the rainfall we've had here just recently over the past 7 days, and then certainly over the next 7 days, are, for lack of a better word, washing away a lot of those drought concerns that we thought we'd see coming out of an El Nino year for the state. If we look at the precipitation totals, just from the ECMWF, the 7-day precipitation anomalies is actually the same map I showed you for the western region. You can see some of these extreme values over Oahu. But again, the axis setting up here could just as easily shift a little bit toward the east or a little bit toward the west, impacting Kauai more or Maui more. And then it's not to say, certainly the forecast could verify and you could have Oahu getting in on the worst of it here. So again, hoping folks stay safe. Similar story from the GFS, but more so that anomalous rain focused on Kauai. So a wide range of possibilities here. All of them looking like heavy rainfall for western, kind of the half or western 2/3 of Hawaii. Shifting gears a bit, want to look at where we're going in the future here. I think, last video, one conversation we had, this forecast for this upper level height pattern from the ECMWF is valid here Wednesday into Thursday of this week, so really over the next 24 hours. And I bring this up because we talked about this ridge here, this rather large upper level ridge. Would this kind of situate over the area and dominate and really change our weather pattern over the west? That would probably kick out some of that May gray that we've been talking about along the coast, bring in some warmer temperatures. It has brought in the warmer temperatures certainly this week. It's kept out some rainfall this week as well, save for parts of the Four Corners, but it didn't have a lot of staying power, if you remember, as we just walked through the forecast. In fact, if I take this out into the future here, you can see that jet stream kind of push in here, that upper level trough influencing the northwest with cooler temperatures. And as we go out through next week into the work week, talked about how that deeper trough would move in, bringing temperatures down really across the region, all the way through California, parts of northern Arizona as well. So we didn't quite see that shift where that upper level ridge dominated across the west region. I think a reason for that, at least looking at some of these ocean temperatures here, are because we still are in this negative PDO, kind of negative PMM regime. And what I mean by that is we have cold water off the west coast of California. We have cold water here in the Gulf of Alaska. Maybe more importantly, we have a lot of anomalous warm water north of Hawaii here. And what that's done is just push the jet stream up and over some of the warmer water here. I think in Hawaii it's strengthened it at times, and it's just naturally kind of bottomed out into a trough at various times across the west region. That's done two things. It's kept temperatures a bit cooler. We talked about that stronger North Pacific high has kept the May gray around. We have the colder waters just off the west coast, and that can help entrench that May gray, those low-level clouds, getting into more of the valleys and further inland. It's also produced a lot of rainfall in the central part of the country where they're struggling here in some of these areas to plant a crop. So a number of different influences here, I think, from the water temperature pattern that we're seeing just off the coast with the cold waters there and the warm waters here north of Hawaii. Something else to keep in mind that we've been talking about just about every week and will continue to is the developing cold waters in the eastern Pacific. This is likely in the beginning of the developing La Nina that we're looking at going through the end of the year this year. Now, as we kind of get out to summer, one thing we think of or associate with these kind of developing La Nina events are more heat and ridging over either the central part of the country, maybe even a little bit further west over the Continental Divide. And, if we look at some of these long-range forecasts, we talked about them this week. I'll pull one up here from the ECMWF seasonal model. This is their temperature forecast for June, July, August. You can see kind of along the Continental Divide here, expecting some sort of ridging to set up anomalous ridging that is bringing higher temperatures to the interior west, perhaps parts of Colorado, Nevada, parts of Arizona as well. A lot of these forecasts advertising a weaker monsoon season as well, perhaps because of that. So this could be a kind of influence of that developing La Nina in the Pacific. Now, I bring this up because if you just jump over and look at the North American Drought Monitor, this got updated recently. It's really only updated once a month. I typically show just the U.S. Drought Monitor. That's updated every week. So this U.S. drought here is going to be at least 2 weeks old here, but it does give us an update, and you can see some of the drought that we're dealing with in Canada. We've seen a resparking of some wildfires up here that we're actually dealing with at the end of last year. But you can also see what I'll call this kind of southwest New Mexico drought. And the concern here is that if we get that weaker monsoon season that's predicted by some of these long-range seasonal models, this could further spread and strengthen more into the Four Corners region here, potentially kind of spreading and even maybe bridging or connecting the drought that we're seeing in Canada with the drought we're seeing in the Southwest. So it's kind of this corridor here where I'm more concerned about for excess heat. Now, if you remember, we had pretty good snowpack for most areas across the West, kind of further south than the line here. So in terms of wildfires, not too worried about areas in here. As you get further north, not looking as good of a snowpack. We have some lingering drought now here, again, associated with, I think, this Canadian drought we've been dealing with for quite a while. So it's this area kind of in here where we'll be a little bit on edge for some wildfires, I think, at the end of this year, especially if we see a lot of that heat build into this area, some of these persistent upper-level ridges that can develop in this area in August and September. Now, it's quite a ways away, but did want to put it on the map as something to be watchful for as we go through the summer months here. If we look at June, July, August precipitation anomalies, again from the ECMWF seasonal forecast, see the attempts to spread that drought into the Four Corners region and even up into southern Idaho and Nevada as well. Again, advertising what could be a weaker monsoon season. If we do in the summer get ridging more toward the north, which could still happen, some heat maybe into British Columbia and Alberta, that could actually be friendly for a monsoon season, which would help to draw up some moisture, I think, if we can get more heat up into the northern or northwest. Remains to be seen if that'll happen. At least right now, models are leaning more toward a weaker monsoon season, but there is some uncertainty there. There is a way to get a monsoon season, I think, out of this pattern. It'd be less with heat toward the kind of Four Corners region and pushing that heat and keeping it more up in this area, which would allow the monsoon season to crank in a bit more Pacific and maybe even Atlantic or Gulf of Mexico moisture. We'll watch that as it kind of develops here going through the year. I wanted to put it on your radar as something to keep an eye on. Kind of big picture here from the Climate Prediction Center, their updated forecast for La Nina going forward is that here's the 50% line. So basically by June, August, July, August, September, I should say, or August, September, October, expecting a better than 50% chance of La Nina developing as we get toward the end of summer into the beginning of fall, and maximizing out here at the end of this year, that is 24 going into 25 near the new year, probabilities increasing up to 85% that we will reach a La Nina by the end of the year. I think that's fairly aggressive, but we do look La Nina in the Pacific. I can see where they got that 85% value from. If we do just jump over and look at those sea surface temperatures one more time, the kind of cold signature here, that negative PMM, negative PDO signature, obviously of the cold waters here in the Eastern Pacific, as these spread more toward the west and get established here, that's your La Nina. So we're waiting to see these push further toward the west. We've seen this strengthen at times, and then it will walk back. In fact, if you pull up here the El Nino index just since the new year, see, we've been in an El Nino. That's where we were the last water year. Ever since about the beginning of April, the end of March, we've been weakening out of that El Nino virtually into INSO neutral here, which I think will be the update on June 9th when the Climate Prediction Center releases their report next month. You can see we've kind of reached this INSO neutral stage, not El Nino, not La Nina, but the trend is certainly in that direction. So when we get down here, sometime later in the year off the screen here, we will be likely in a La Nina. Not sure I would put it up at 85%, maybe closer to 70-75%. But, not a huge difference between the two. The expectation, more likely than not, is we'll be at La Nina at the end of the year, which if it's a more classic traditional La Nina, we'd typically expect more precipitation into parts of the Pacific Northwest or the northern half of the West region, and then would be concerned potentially kind of getting out into next year for some drought for areas further south or California. That would be almost a year from now. It's too early to talk specifics on that, but that's just the general textbook for a La Nina. I think that's it. Last slide I have here for you all on this Wednesday afternoon. Thank you for watching.